Hey, viewer-kun, have you ever made something, like put your heart and soul into creating something? In a lot of ways, that kind of makes that thing that you created your baby, your little tyke, your little infant. And the thing about babies that I find fascinating is that in a lot of ways, they represent the infinite potential of humanity, the infinite potential of a person to become anything. They're like a little blank slate getting ready to become something completely different and fascinating that will have an impact on the world around them. Art is much the same way. Before you release anything, when you're making it, it's like you're pregnant with an idea, with a concept. And in this case, the person who was pregnant was Tenma, who reached out to me to show me their new project, Wundergarten.
Hey, you guys mind if I put in my mixtape?
Yes, he showed me his mixtape, and I feel like the thing that really fascinates me about Wundergarten is like the idea of what it could become, right? The possibility of what this piece of art could be in the future if allowed, if given the opportunity to grow. Because as of right now, the only thing I've seen of it is a chapter 0, and I have a very middle of the road view of it so far. There's simply just not enough yet to really say how it's gonna turn out or how I'm gonna feel about it. And that's what drives me fucking insane, is just the not knowing of where things are gonna go. Now, a big point of intrigue for me with Wundergarten is just how sinister it is and mysterious. It doesn't really let you in too deeply as to its thematic leanings. There are lots of stories, like for example, recently I've been reading Witch Hat Atelier, which just goes straight into its thematic ideas. Wundergarten doesn't really do that. In chapter 0, which actually released about a month ago, I'll put it in the description below so that you guys can check it out and see what I'm fucking talking about. The story starts in Medea's race with two of our title characters, Alice and Dorothy, fighting with cosmic black stand entities in this weird warped fairy tale like world. And then immediately cuts to the past where we see the two of them are like friends, and you're meant to ask the question of, oh, what happened? Why did we jump from here to there? Chapter 0 itself is actually mostly really normal, with little leanings or implications that there's more going on than meets the eye, both in the personal lives of the characters and also in the town they live in. As it's only one singular chapter, there's not that much you can take away from it, especially since this is a comic. In a comic / manga format, it's very difficult to pile in a bunch of a bunch of weird details to a story. Most creators really spend that time just trying to build out and flesh out, oh, this is what the story's about. But Wundergarten doesn't really want to jump straight into that. In the first introductory scene with all the girls together, or rather having a conversation over the phone, we see that the vast majority of them seem to be somewhat athletic or very heavily involved in extracurricular. We see that despite the happy-go-luckiness of all the characters, there's like things under the surface that are not being said, not being mentioned, with Dorothy and a person who seems to be her father in one of the panels as she leaves her house, or with another girl called Isabella who seems to be possibly going through some weird depression shit. Another character, Milena, who seems to hide the fact that she's an otaku nerd for some reason. And perhaps most interestingly is Alice and her seemingly weird, competitive, almost passive-aggressive dynamic with Dorothy. But everything for the most part is all smiles, right? It's all smiles. Let's not touch on the details, da-da-da-da-da. All the way up to the point where the supernatural starts to get involved. Now, this is perhaps one of the most interesting elements of the story for me, and that is its connection to fairy tales and just generally old school fantasy tales. The name Wundergarten, being very Germanic, invokes this idea or this feeling of things connected to the Grimm brothers, who were these pair of brotherly German scholars who collected folklore tales all around Germany in the late 18th to mid 19th century. A lot of the most famous fairy tales we know of today are actually stories collected by the Grimm brothers, things like Hansel and Gretel or Little Red Riding Hood. Now, a thing I thought about and I really got heady about is the idea that a lot of these stories have some sort of sinister element. There's like a normal human being, a person, especially a girl or children, who end up encountering some sort of dangerous or supernatural element that is out to harm them, but is not necessarily completely intrinsically aware of the danger that they are in. This sort of chiaroscuro of having this very fantastical and cute vibe, while at the same time there being this sinister element, this sinister enemy there attempting to hurt the protagonists of the story. It potentially may be what Wundergarten is really going for with its aesthetic. But that's not the only detail. Another thing you may have picked up based on the names I used is Alice and Dorothy, obviously being named after and inspired by Alice from Alice in Wonderland and Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. These are stories that are also sort of considered fairy tale-ish, but are not necessarily among the oldest folklore type stories. They're more so books that were written in the mid 19th to early 20th century, with Alice in Wonderland being published in 1865 and the original Oz story, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, being written in 1900. Both stories feature an idea of these young girls essentially being whisked away to this weird, eclectic new world with strange and nonsensical elements, but that are deeply tied to the psyche of humanity as we think of it, and to the psyche of the girls themselves. Fundamentally, when Tenma first emailed me about this series that he was working on, he said that I may be interested in it because of the fact that I am Isekai Defense Force Commander Jade. And in a lot of ways, you could say stories like Alice in Wonderland and The Wonderful Wizard of Oz are essentially among some of the first portal fantasy isekai as stories. So the connection is there, but ultimately everything I'm saying here is mainly just conjecture, because once again, this series is literally just born. Tenma literally just gave birth to this series after being pregnant for 9 months. How this series will grow and whether or not it'll grow up to be a healthy series has to do with both Tenma's parenting or writing and drawing and the potential support, or therefore lack of support, it may or may not receive from the general public. That means you, audience-kun. If you're interested in any of what I just talked about, go check out Wundergarten. Once again, I'll leave the trailer, the chapter 0, or any other resources I can think of in the description below. Tell me how you felt about this video. I've basically been freeballing things for quite a while because my hands have been fucked up for the last couple of months. This is the reason why I've been very slow in making videos for the most part, and why it took me so long to even put this one out is general hand issues, hand pain, thanks to people who have been very patient despite the length of things. And I really do appreciate it if you do, stick around and watch my videos. It means a whole ton. You literally have no fucking idea. But anyway, that's the video. May we meet again.